every human interaction, no matter how brief, has the potential to change your life.
You probably know more people on an intimate basis than maybe anybody walking the planet right now.
His name is Rob, and he's on a mission to make 10,000 friends.
And his name is Rob Lawless.
Rob Lawless.
Rob Lawless has a lot of friends.
I've met 2,833 people, over 2,900. Gone through over 3,500 conversations. In the last 7 years, I've met 5,242 people from 90 different countries around the world.
I was there and I was asking people, I was like, hey, what was your favorite presentation? And so many people talked about you.
Always wanted to create a future out of connecting with people. How many of us have these intricacies in our lives that might seem weird from the outside looking in, or it might seem funny, but would make absolute sense if people just took the time to get to know us?
Because where everyone says I look different, inside I just feel like me.
And those photographs, to me, are the most valuable things that I have.
You're just helping me remain hopeful.
Human connection is becoming a bigger part of our companies and our organizations. And there are a lot of statistics out there, like ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to outperform their peers. Or connected and engaged employees are 87% less likely to leave their companies. And I think all of this is great, but I think it's more of a company speak, and I want to take you from that kind of mindset to the mindset that the people around you are just incredibly interesting. In other words, we want to go from letting corporate statistics drive a passion for human connection to letting human connection drive success in corporate statistics. Through my project, I've realized the more I interact with the depth of people, the more I acknowledge that it exists. Like that's Carlise right there.
Oh my God.
That's Bobby right over there.
Is that listening and that hearing people, really hearing their stories, can bring us together.
So many of us that have other things in our lives that define who we are. And if we are only coming together at the water cooler at an event like this and talking about the work versions of ourselves, we're missing out on the biggest pieces of who we are. It helps you see people as they see themselves. And that, I think, is one of the greatest gifts you can give to someone. The takeaway is that you have the potential to create this impact in your own circles. By being a positive example of human connection, by being intentional about connection in your own life, you will help other people see the value in it.
That was amazing.
So when I got into the real world, I was feeling like it was hard to create authentic connection with people. I don't know how many people in this room felt that way, but in college, it was like you just sat next to someone in class or you met them out at a party, and then suddenly in the real world, there had to be some defined agenda, some ROI as to why we were spending time together. I felt like it was only networking or dating that you could connect with new people. So I left Deloitte after a year and 3 months. My parents thought that was a mistake. I went into a tech startup, and when I was there, I was feeling this way, and I thought, you know, I'll solve this issue the way any logical person would do so. I'll set a goal to spend an hour with 10,000 different people. Why not? Sounds great. So November 11th of 2015, I met the first person for my project. And over the next 8 months, I met over 100 more people. And at the end of those 8 months, the tech startup that I worked for was acquired. Now, I did not get any money from this acquisition. I got laid off. So my parents, at this point, were thinking, okay, you screwed up. This was a lesson learned. Time to go back into the consulting world. Should have never left in the beginning. And I said, thank you. I hear you. I see you. I'm going to jump into this project full time. So that's what I did. I started meeting about 5 new people every single day. I ended up moving out to Los Angeles for a year and a half. I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey for 9 months. I drove across the United States 6 different times, meeting people in about 20 different cities along the way. And I met 3,259 people all in person before COVID happened. And then, of course, the pandemic comes. So March of 2020, so let me tell you, before then, guy meeting 10,000 people, it's a really cool headline. Like, it's a lot of goodwill associated with it. People love it. In March of 2020, guy meeting 10,000 people. That's a super spreader event, and I did not want to be associated with that. So I took my project online, and I've since met over 2,500 more people from 90 different countries around the world. And it's had a huge impact on my perspective and how I see myself in society. And I've also had the opportunity to share my story in some really cool places. As we mentioned, like Now This, The Today Show, The New York Post. I was on Kelly Clarkson's talk show in 2019. Really cool experience. And it was Kelly Clarkson on her little chair, and then it was me, and then Jane Lynch, who is a famous actress, and Joe Coy, who's a famous comedian. In other words, it was 3 famous people and Rob up on this stage, and I'm pretty sure I was the only one fighting off a panic attack the entire time. But what happened, the producers, when they reached out to me, they said, Rob, we know you spent time in Los Angeles. We think it'd be really cool if you invited the people from your project to be in the audience. So 800 direct messages on Instagram later, that day the entire audience, aside from like 10 people, was made up of people that I had met through my project. So really, who was the famous one, right? But in all seriousness, I just thought it was so cool that I met these people not knowing when or if I would ever see them again in my life. And turns out they are all here together as a community for one of the most important days of my career. What a beautiful, beautiful instance. So I want to help you create this value in your own life. And my recommendations for you are to set a connection goal for yourself, to learn the Ford framework, which we'll go over today, and to reflect on your connections. Now, a connection goal, you might think, okay, that feels authentic. I don't want to do that. I'm out. But to me, this is how you treat human connection as an experience rather than a transaction. What if instead of connecting with people only when you needed something from them, you made it a routine part of your life? Now, you don't have to have a goal to spend an hour with 10,000 different people. If you want, I recommend it. I think it's fun. But think about it. You could meet one new person every month. You could meet one person from this room a month for the next year, and think about how much stronger your ties with each other would be. You could have a conversation with the person behind you in the coffee line for 5 minutes. I just think when you have a connection goal, when it becomes a routine part of your life, it allows you to tap into the value of connection. As I said, I think people only think about it in terms of networking or dating, but I have seen 3 different levels through my 5,900 connections. And the first is just an increased sense of belonging. And that's just math, right? The more people you expose yourself to, the more you're going to see people that you know out and about because you become aware of them. And this started to happen all the time with my project. I met my friend Aaron in October of 2017. We donated blood together in Philadelphia. And 8 months later, I'm driving down the road in Santa Monica, California to one of my meetings. And I hear this beep from the car next to me. And I thought, oh, shoot, maybe I swerved into their lane. I'm just going to peek over. So I peek over, and there's Erin with this big smile waving to me from her car. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. I tried to wave back to her. She didn't see me. I tried to shoot her a message on Instagram. She wasn't there anymore. So I just thought, well, that was a really cool experience. So I parked my car, and I went to my meeting. And when I came back, I had this white slip on the windshield. And I thought, another ticket. Because I was building a small collection of them at the time. But lucky for me, it wasn't a ticket. It was a note from Erin. She said, hey, Rob, that was me. I don't know if you saw me. And I'm just reading this note with a smile on my face. And as I'm doing that, she comes walking up the street to her car. She had parked right near me. We caught up in that moment. We gave each other a big hug. And I thought it was really cool because if she and I did not take the time to meet each other 8 months prior, she's one other stranger who walks past me that day. But just because we took the time to get to know each other, we turned an everyday moment into something special. And I think you all have the power to do that too. Think about your patients if you got to know them on a deeper level, your colleagues, the people in this room, how you could turn everyday moments into special moments. So there's this increased sense of belonging. The second thing is this expansion of our perspective. Now you can't tell from this photo, but my friend Fernanda and I spent our entire hour together crying. We were meeting at a sunny cafe in Los Angeles. It was a beautiful day. And she told me about how her brother Eduardo, the year prior, Eduardo pictured on the right here, he was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And you could just tell how close of a relationship that they had with each other. And to make matters worse, when she was a little girl growing up in Brazil, when she was 9 years old, her dad was hit and killed by a drunk driver. So I left that meeting thinking to myself, how could I not be thankful for the fact that I could FaceTime my parents right now? I could call my brother, I could text my sister. Fernanda helped me realize there's a finiteness to life, right? There's nothing we can do about when the people we care about will be taken from us, but what we can change is how actively we appreciate them while we still have them. So whether my parents liked it or not, I moved back in with them several times throughout my project. And every night before bed, I would give them both a hug and I'd tell them that I love them, because I just wanted them to know that I loved them in case anything ever happened. And that was a direct result of my time with Fernanda. I thought it was fascinating that an hour with a total stranger changed the way that I spent time with the people closest to me. So there's this expansion of our perspective as well. And the last thing is there's this opening of doors to new opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't be able to create for ourselves. So 2018 summer, I'm going to San Diego for a week, and I'm looking for people to meet for my project. So my cousin Jill introduces me to this guy, Tyson. He replies to the email introduction. He says, "Hey, sure, Rob, I'd love to meet with you. Do you want to go up in a modern or historical aircraft when we meet?" And I thought, how did you know, Tyson? That's exactly what I was thinking for our meeting. So I meet him at the hangar. I'm pumped. I get out of my car. I hop into his. The gate swings open, and we're rolling up to this plane. And I'm excited. And he decides that this is the appropriate moment to turn to me and say, "Oh, by the way, Rob, the plane is amateur built. I built it myself, so you don't have to fly in it if you don't want." And I thought, you could have included that in the email. I saw one more line. And I know some of you out there are thinking, okay, Rob, get over yourself. People fly private aircraft all the time. There's no need to be worried, but I have never before then or since then seen a plane that looks like this. And if you look, it does say experimental on the side of the plane. So I was a little bit worried as to whether or not I should get into the plane with this man. And of course I did. I had to do it for the story. Again, experience of fighting off a panic attack, but this time trying not to throw up from the G-forces of the turns, and then just having one of the best hours of my life, because once you settled in, you're just cruising over the coast of California. And what a wonderful way to get to know someone new. So I think every human interaction has the potential to change your life, in the sense it can increase your sense of belonging, it can expand your perspective, it can open the door to a new opportunity. So if you're thinking, okay, well, I'll talk to people, but I don't really know what to talk to them about, that's why we have the FRIEND framework here. So FRIEND framework, it stands for family and relationships, industry, entertainment, and needs and dreams. So if you're taking notes on this, by the way, I'm going to have a QR code at the end that's going to have all of these categories with the questions that I use on a daily basis. So you can capture that afterwards. But I'm going to go with this with you, through this with you, and we're going to practice with each other. So I believe that you can get to know anyone in the world by thinking about their life like a timeline and teasing out their story by asking questions within each of these categories. Because no matter where we're from or what our background is, we all have a birthplace. We all have a childhood. We all have an education. Mine included working at Chick-fil-A at 14 years old. Maybe broke some child labor laws there, but it's okay. We're in the past. We all have this university, potentially university experience, this career, and a future. So what I want to do now is just go through each of these categories with you and have you practice with each other. And I want to start with family and relationships. The place that I actually start with is location. So I think location gives us a starting point for people's stories. Now, I assume that everyone in this room is from Asheville, North Carolina, until you tell me differently, because I just think it's polite, right? Like if I'm talking to someone in Philadelphia, you're from Philadelphia until you tell me differently. But it's cool because if you're from Asheville, then I have a question of, have you ever left and come back? Have you been here your entire life? If you're not, there's a story of how you got from where you were born to where you are today. So we have this evolution of location in our lives. And next we have our supporting cast members, our family members. I like to ask people, do you have any siblings? If so, are you close with them? Where do you fall in the order? I also ask people, do you still have both of your parents? Because it acknowledges that many people, like my friend Fernanda, have experienced loss. So we have our family in our childhood, and then we have our family in our adulthood. So we can go back to the location piece. Okay, what part of North Carolina do you live in now? And then we can think about, do you have a spouse? If so, what's the story behind how you met your significant other? And then do you have kids? Do you want to have kids? While acknowledging that not everyone wants or has the ability to have kids. And also with relationships, we can talk about our friends. Who makes up your core group of friends? Is it your colleagues? Is it people from your elementary school, from college? Who are your closest friends? So what I want to do real quick, how many people are sitting next to someone that they know? Show of hands. All right, great. So don't talk to that person next to you, because I want to use this opportunity as a way for you to connect with people you don't know. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock here, and I just want you to chat about your family dynamic with someone you don't know. Don't be afraid to get up and move around. And the way I'm going to bring you all back at the end is I'm going to raise my hand. And when you see me raise my hand, you're going to raise your hand. You're going to stop talking to the person next to you, and you're going to stare directly at me. And that's how we'll signal to everyone else that we're coming back. So I'll put 5 minutes on the clock. Find someone you don't know, and I'm going to leave this up here as a reference. How many people felt like they needed more time with the person they were talking to? All right, cool. So it's a good thing we still have the whole day to go, right? So family and relationships, right? I think that has a big impact on who we are emotionally. I think our industry has a big impact on how we spend our time. And I like to break this down into just our education and our occupation. And I like to break down the education piece into high school and then university experience, college experience. So we're thinking about, okay, what was your favorite subject? What clubs or activities were you a part of? What kind of part-time job did you have outside? So quickly, I liked math and art in high school. I played soccer for 4 years. I was on the golf team for 2 years. And I have the school record for golf at my school, so a quick round of applause for me. It's the worst score on 9 holes. But so then we go into our college, right, and we have, okay, what inspired you to study dentistry? What inspired you to pick this particular degree? Where did you go to school? What clubs or activities were you a part of outside of that? What kind of internships did you have? And then we get into our actual career here, and we're thinking, okay, if you graduated in 2000, that means there's been 23 years that have passed since then. What is the flow of those 23 years? Like, did you work for other people? Did you start your own practice? How long have you been doing this or that? And I will tell people, I think about people's lives like timelines, so what were you doing in each of those years since you graduated? And you can talk about this if you're talking to a legislator or a patient as well, just to tease out what the flow of their career has been. Another thing that I love to ask people is, what did you think that you would be doing when you were in high school? How many people here in high school knew that they were going to be in dentistry? I knew it was going to be a lot. I feel like dentists, for some reason, just know that that's what they're going to do. But there were people that didn't raise their hands. So the cool thing is we have a lot of people here who knew. They have a story of why they wanted to become a dentist. And then we have half of the room that thought they were going to be something else and somehow ended up becoming dentists. So there's a catalyst that put them on that path. And for the rest of you, there's something that kept you on that path. Right? So we can think about our career in that way as well. So what I want to do again is have you break out into new pairs, not with the person you just talked with, and just discuss your career, your industry, your education into your occupation, and what that has looked like. I'll put 5 more minutes on the clock, and I will see you soon. We're going to do the arm thing at the end. We're going to entertainment is where we're going once I get my thing here working. But entertainment is kind of like our personality, right? So how many people here watch Bob Ross? Yeah, Bob Ross. Yeah. A lot of nostalgia just came up in the room. I used to watch Bob Ross in college to fall asleep at night. I feel like he was the original ASMR. But if you remember, he would do his paintings, and then at the end, he'd be like, we're going to put a happy little tree over here. We're going to put a nice little deer over here. And to me, that is the entertainment side of people's stories. It's what gives you personality. The issue with entertainment is if I come into you with a conversation, I say, hey, what are your hobbies? Probably you're going to become paralyzed by that question and think, oh God, I have to tell Rob something super interesting, like I just ran an ultramarathon last week, or I'm doing some carpentry this weekend. It's not the case. With entertainment, we're not asking what makes you interesting, which I think a lot of people feel like they have to do. It's just, what are you interested in? So I think a better way to think about this question is, what are the routine things that you do outside of work? It could be watching Jeopardy. It could be going to church. It could be anything. Just what are the routine things that you do outside of work? And another thing is, how are you entertaining yourself? So what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? Right now, for example, I'm watching Jury Duty, which is a great show. I recommend it. I'm reading Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I listen to everyone from Frank Sinatra and Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons to Dr. Dre and Eminem to Jack Johnson and John Mayer. So in 10 seconds there, you have a better idea of my interests outside of just being the guy in a suit talking about connection, right? And some of you may have thought, I watched that show as well, or I like that artist as well. And you can see there are points in which we can connect with each other already. The key with this category is specifics will move a conversation forward. Generalizations will kill it. If I say, hey, what kind of music are you into? And you say, hey, well, I like everything except for country. Some of these people are like, that's a crime. That should not be said. But You can't really go anywhere with that information, right? You have to ask another question. But if you say, like, I like Garth Brooks, then, oh, okay, cool. Now I can ask about favorite songs, if you've ever seen him in concert, how you became a fan. So specifics will move the conversation forward. Another thing here is my favorite question in thinking about entertainment is this one. If there's one question that you remember and that you want to talk to your patients, to legislators about, I think this is the most powerful one. And every time I ask people this in my conversations with them, they always sit back and go, oh, that's such a good question. The question is, if you think about your identity as a pie chart, what would be the breakdown of categories of how you define yourself, right? How many people here, dentistry is 100% of your identity? No, okay, right? So for everyone in this room, at an event like this, it might be really easy to talk dentistry the whole time, but what we do with a question like this is we say, I understand dentistry is just a slice of who you are, and I understand that there are other slices that make up who you are as well. There's two things that this question does, and the first is it gives context to the person you're talking to. So if they say dentistry is actually 30% of who I am, you say, okay, that means there's 70% more of you that I can get to know in this conversation. If dentistry is 60%, okay, it's the majority of your identity, but there's still 40% of who you are outside of that. The second thing is this question helps you see people as they see themselves. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts we can give to one another. I write about people after I meet with them, and one of my favorite things is when I see them say, oh, this was such a great, accurate description of who I am. Or when one of their friends comments and says, this is great, this is exactly the type of person that I know. It helps you truly see people. We're going to go into needs and dreams here. And that is just thinking about, okay, if we're thinking about this timeline, everything that we had was from our birthplace up until the present moment. Needs and dreams is the present moment going forward. And what I'd like to do with this category is just kind of bring back all those other categories. So if you're thinking about career, what are your aspirations in your career? You know, do you probably have your own practice, or if not, do you hope to have it someday? Do you hope to grow it, expand? What does that look like? Beyond your career goals, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to make an impact on the dentistry field? Do you want to make an impact outside of that, solve something like gender inequality or world hunger? And beyond that, what's on your bucket list? What are the things that you want to do before you die? What places do you want to see? Sites do you want to see? Foods do you want to try? Personally, I think it would be really cool to hug a penguin before I die. So if we have any zoo connections in the room, just feel free to chat with me afterwards. And then we can talk about our location as well, right? Like, where do you want to be location-wise? Do you want to remain in North Carolina? Do you want to retire to a beach in Mexico? Do you want to end up in London? Where do you want to be location-wise, and why? And then what do you want your family to look like in the future? And again, do you want to have kids? Do you want to have grandkids if you have kids? While recognizing that not everyone wants or has the ability to have kids. So for the last time here, I'm going to break you out into pairs with someone that you don't know to chat about your entertainment and your needs and dreams. The pie chart question, I think, is a really interesting one to chat about. So I'll put 5 minutes on the clock, and I will see you soon. This is the Friend Framework. If you want to take a picture of it real quick, that will give you, you can put in your email, get a download for the framework and all of the questions that I've used. So the last thing here is just reflections. I think it's really cool to reflect on the people that we meet because that allows us to lock in the value of what we've learned. Right? The way that I do this is I take a picture with everyone that I meet and I write their story afterwards. And you definitely do not have to do this, right? You don't have to write a story, but think about like your patients if you have a CRM for them. If you ask questions within this friend framework and then you wrote down those answers and you brought them up the next time they were in. If you kept notes like a connection journal or something like that, it just allows you to lock in the value. And in a way, it inspires other people to go on their own journeys of connection, or you help increase the sense of belonging in your environment. Now, just by doing my project, my friend Naomi saw it and she said she was experiencing loneliness. So she said, I am going to meet people in Boston one-on-one for 1 hour each. She's since met over 30 people. But it didn't stop there. I had my two friends in Toronto, these two cousins, who said, we're going to meet people during the quarantine. They each met over 100 people. And one of them, this guy Ahmed, his cousin, met his girlfriend. She lives in Fort Lauderdale. He lives in Toronto. They never would have met if it weren't for his project. And the last I spoke to him, he said they're actually moving in together in Montreal. So I texted him and I said, hey man, how did you do this? Because I've been doing this for 7 years and I haven't found a girlfriend yet. So I got to get back to him on that. But It didn't stop there. It went over to my friend Marcel, who did this in Germany, and lastly, my friend Taher in India. And I share this with you not to say, hey, look at me and all the cool things that I've done. I share this with you to say, you all have the power and the potential to create this value in your lives and for the other people around you. When you take a genuine interest in other people's stories, you help the people around you see the value in it. So just think about it. What if you set a connection goal for yourself? What if you use that friend framework to drive your conversations? What if you reflected on your connections, and as a result, what if that inspired others to meet new people? Because remember, every human interaction has the potential to change your life. So I have one final request for you, which is don't let this end here. Today in this room, you were vulnerable with each other. You opened yourselves up. You forged new connections. What if you carried that openness from this room with you out into the world? What if instead of just meeting people, you truly saw them? What would that unlock in you, in them, and in the world? For me, it led to moments that I will never forget. My friend Jack here, he was number 5328. He helped me get my dream vacation. I'm going to India next month because of him. Michelle in the middle here, she was number 2118. She is the reason I became a public speaker, and my friend Dave here, number 5113, found me my current apartment and has been my neighbor for the last year. So who could it be for you, right? And maybe 6,423 will be my future wife. My parents would love that. But who could it be for you, right? If you went out and met new people, what if you decided to commit to meeting people not only when you needed something from them, but just as a routine part of your life? Not for the goals, not for the metrics, but because you are human, right? And then maybe one day, years from now, we could look back on this room, this very room, and see this as the start of something beautiful.
Here's a situation. You and a total stranger are put into a room together. Your assignment is to fill an hour of conversation between just the two of you. What's your move? I know some of you right now are thinking my move is right back out that door we just came in, right? I have put myself in this exact situation willingly over 4,200 times over the last 5 years. As part of my mission to spend 1 hour one-on-one with 10,000 different people. I started this journey because I believe every human interaction holds the potential to change your life. I believe you can capture this potential by more intentionally connecting with the people around you and by treating human connection as an experience rather than a transaction. Did you know the co-founders of Google, they met spontaneously on a Stanford University tour? Sergey Brin was Larry Page's tour guide. Or that we have Apple because Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they were introduced through a mutual high school friend. I want you to think for a minute, literally how different would our world look today if these people had never met? I mean, we'd be searching for our calculus answers on Bing with our Blackberries, and nobody wants that. Now I'm kidding, but what the guys from Google and Apple have taught us is that when two people come together, it can actually change the world. Now speaking of nerds, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I graduated valedictorian of my high school class. I graduated summa cum laude with my finance degree from Penn State. And that might make you think that I always had my head in the books. I took my academics very seriously, but I always prioritized human connection because I felt it was important. When I was a student at Penn State, I did everything from building houses with Habitat for Humanity, to joining a fraternity, to raising money for the fight against pediatric cancer, to becoming a tour guide. And as a result, I built these amazing friendships that not only allowed me to have the time of my life in school, they became the most valuable thing I took away from it. When I started my career doing strategy and operations consulting, and later did sales for a venture-funded tech startup, I noticed that the specifics of how to calculate beta coefficients, that started to fade away real quick. Sorry, Professor Gray. But the friendships only grew stronger. So 5 years ago, I'm feeling a little bit unfulfilled in my career, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't do this for the next 40 years. It can't be this. So I start asking questions. What happens if we become more intentional about connecting with the people around us? Do we start the next greatest thing? Or do we find a better sense of happiness on a daily basis? I had questions, and to get to the answers, I did what any other logical 24-year-old would do. I set out on a mission to spend 1 hour one-on-one with 10,000 different people. I started my journey in November of 2015. I took it 8 months. 8 months later, I took it full time. And in the 5 years since then, it's changed the way that I view human connection and the potential that lies within it. Because too often people only think of connecting in terms of networking or dating, where there's this defined agenda. Because of this, I think they're overlooking the true value of the experience. There are levels to it, and I think you can capture these levels, tap into them by making it a more regular part of your life, like reading a book or going to the gym. Now, before you roll your eyes at this idea, let me tell you a quick story. In 2011, University of Chicago professor Nick Epley ran a study on Chicago metro commuters. He split the people up into groups. The first group was told, sit in isolation, don't talk to anyone on your commute. The second group was told, form a connection, have a conversation with a stranger. And at the end, they each reported on how enjoyable their journeys were. The results? Who had the more enjoyable commute? That's right, group 2. So as you go through your journey of life, which of these groups would you rather be in? Like the commuters in group 2, if you set a goal to intentionally connect with the people around you, whether it's 1 new person a month or 20 new people a year, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour with each person, you are going to positively impact your life. From a very base level, our first level is this increased sense of belonging. When you connect with the other people around you, you'll feel this, and we're actually hardwired to feel this way. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, more human connection meant better protection against predators, more people hunting and gathering, more chances of reproduction. And back then, when people spent their entire lives with the same small group of people, that sense of social acceptance was incredibly important. It literally meant the difference between life and death. Now for us, the stakes are a little bit lower, right? Because, let's face it, Amazon does all the hunting and gathering for us. The packages just show up on our doorstep. But that sense of social pain and that fear of rejection, that has stuck around. Today we hear a lot about social media driving us apart and contributing to increased rates of loneliness. And that leads to increased rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if instead of feeling compared to the people on our social media, we could feel connected to them? And what if actually all it took was for us to reach out? Before the pandemic, I met 3,259 people, all in person, using mainly Instagram to connect with them. I met people in my home city of Philadelphia, in Los Angeles, New York City, and about 20 other cities as I drove back and forth across the country 6 different times. And the coolest thing started to happen. I started to run into these people all the time after meeting them. Nate, for example, he and I met at a coffee shop in 2017 in Philadelphia. A year and a half later, we bumped into each other at the LAX airport. Just happened to be on the same flight from LA back to Philly. Or Erin. She and I, we donated blood together in Philly for my project. Over a year later, I'm driving down the road in Santa Monica, California. I hear this beep. I look to my left, and there's Erin, waving from her car. I didn't get to say hi in that moment, but I went and parked, I went into my meeting, and when I came back, I thought what I had was a ticket on the windshield. But I opened it up, and it was a note from Erin. She had parked right near me, saw my car, left the note, and as I'm reading it, she comes walking up the street. She and I were able to reconnect in that moment, and it was awesome. And that's the beauty of connecting with people. When you sit with them, you increase your sense of belonging in that moment because you're enjoying each other's company. But at the same time, you're setting yourself up for these spontaneous run-ins in the future. When you meet with people, you're increasing your awareness of them. And inevitably, when you see them out and about in the future, you'll recognize them. So that's our first layer, this increased sense of belonging. And on top of that, We have this exchange of knowledge, this second layer of knowledge. It can be something simple like interacting with a personality that you are most definitely going to come in contact with again in the future. Or something like the name of a new musical artist. If I hadn't met Vivian last year, I wouldn't have known about this Kenyan band, Sauti Sol. Their upbeat song, Susanna, I kid you not, it got me through the beginning of quarantine. If you haven't heard it, check it out. So it can be simple like that, or it can be something deeper like an increased sense of gratitude or a shift in perspective. When I met Fernanda in 2018, she said, I don't want to talk about me, I want to talk about my brother, Eduardo. She told me that her brother had been hit and killed the year prior by a drunk driver. And what made this especially difficult for her was the fact that she lost her dad to a drunk driver when she was 9. As we talked, I really got a sense of her relationship with her brother. They would go to dinners to places like Maggiano's. They would go to concerts like the Foo Fighters. They would play pranks on each other when picking each other up from the airport. And it really made me think about my own siblings and my own parents, and how lucky I was to still have them in my life. Fernanda and I cried together that day during that meeting, and she told me something that has since stuck with me. She said, there's no I love you quota for family. There's no I love you quota for family. So now whenever I say goodbye to my friends or goodnight to family members, I always tell them I love you, because I recognize even more that there's this finiteness to life. And the best thing we can do is appreciate our loved ones while we still have them. Similarly, I had this shift in perspective when I met with Chris. He was a hotel concierge in Philly, and I remember walking up to that meeting thinking, he probably grew up in the area like me, probably went to school around here, has a pretty normal story. Well, I was wrong. When we spoke, he told me that he was raised in Nigeria in the early years of his life. And when he was 16, he was living in Romania. That year, he went over to New York City to go boating on the Hudson River with some friends. Chris fell off of the boat that day, was run over by it, and had his legs sucked up into the engines. He described it as if his legs were put into a blender. The muscle was cut away from the bone. He lost several liters of blood, technically died on the way to the hospital, was brought back to life, given a 12% chance of walking again, and a 15% chance of living. Fortunately, Chris beat both those odds and told me this story as we walked through the streets of Philadelphia. But he didn't just tell me his story that day, he taught me the difference between a problem and an inconvenience. Because having your legs tucked up into the engines of a boat, that's a problem. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. For me, when I have felt stressed about exams or finances, or sad that I couldn't see my friends over the last year, when I put that into perspective, oftentimes they were inconveniences. What I learned from talking to people like Fernanda and Chris is there is this incredible spectrum of life paths that exist in the world. And sometimes it's easy to get overwhelmed with our own stories. But when you talk to people outside of your circle, outside of your echo chamber, you start to understand where you fit on this spectrum, what you might want to shoot for in your life, or what you might have to be thankful for. Either way, you'll become a better person, because you'll become a better conversationalist, you'll become more prepared for your future, you'll become more empathetic. Because even if you can't relate to someone's story or a situation through your particular story, you'll be able to do so through the story of someone you've met. So that's our second layer, this exchange of knowledge that we get when we talk with people. And on top of that, we have our third layer, the opening of doors for your future. And I think this is what most people think of when they think of connection. For me, before the pandemic, I met a ton of people in coffee shops, over drinks at a bar, or at parks. And since then, in the last year, everything has been over Zoom, which has actually been really cool because I've met people from over 75 different countries, and that in and of itself has been an amazing learning experience. But every once in a while, when I met people in person, they took me on these amazing adventures that were tied to their life in some way. I met Tyson, a pilot who built his own plane over the course of 15 years. He and I spent our hour flying over the coast of San Diego together. I don't know about you, but I have never seen a plane like this. And it didn't really help that as we were rolling up to it, he waited to that moment to say, oh, by the way, it's amateur built, so you don't have to fly in it if you don't want. Okay, and when I did a little bit further recon and actually looked at the plane, I noticed the all caps experimental written on the side of it. And it didn't do much to ease my nerves, but I had to go on the flight, and I did, and it was an amazing way to experience flight. And sometimes I met people who didn't necessarily take me on new experiences, but they helped further my mission of connection. People like Ryan, the CEO of a t-shirt company called Serengeti. Now, follow me here for this one. After he and I met, he sponsored me through his company. That caught the attention of Morgan from Oregon. A year later, she moved to LA, and she and I met for the project. She reposted our photo to her page. The next day, I get an email from her friend, who just happened to be a producer for Ryan Seacrest's radio show. It says, I want to get you on air with Ryan Seacrest. And I thought to myself, wow, that's incredibly convenient because I want to be on air with Ryan Seacrest. So within a week, he and I are on the phone talking about my project to his national radio audience. And I was then able to take that audio, send it to the co-working space we work, and land a 9-month partnership with them, which has helped me continue doing my project to this day. So just by meeting Ryan Westberg, I had this partnership and the ability to continue doing my project. And that's the beautiful thing about connection, especially when you treat it as an experience. When you go in genuinely wanting to know someone else's story, inevitably, sometimes it's going to lead to places you never could have imagined. Because when you meet with people, you set things in motion for your future. And they could play out 2 days from now, they could play out 2 years from now, or 20 years from now. But every time you make a connection, you open a door to a novel experience or an avenue of support that you never could have imagined for yourself. So those are our 3 layers. We have our baseline sense of belonging, our exchange of knowledge, and our opening of doors. And the best part is you can start doing this in your own life today. For the last year, so many of us have been starved of human connection. And one of the coolest things I've learned through my project is I'm not the only one who wants to meet new people. So if you feel inspired to meet new people, take that step, set a goal for yourself, and start reaching out to people. When I started my project, I had nothing. I had no Instagram following. I had no press pieces. I had nothing to show for it, but people met with me because they were helping me reach a goal. And I think the same would be true for you. It could be as simple as saying, hey, I watched this TEDx talk with this guy and he spoke about being more intentional about connection. I'm trying to meet a certain number of people in my life. Will you be one of them? Now, not everyone will be willing to help, but you will find people who want to help you, just as I did when I sent out emails to people or Instagram messages. And then they started to introduce me to their friends, and eventually people started reaching out to me. And along my journey, I also saw other people on their own journeys of connection. People like Ahmed, a fan of the YouTube channel Yes Theory. He leveraged their Facebook group to meet 100 new people during quarantine. As you can see, over 300 people from all around the world responded to be part of his project. And he completed it in just over 7 months. I had people tell me about a service called Lunch Club, an AI service that each week connects you with one other person for a one-on-one 45-minute conversation based on your background and your experiences. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way. Get involved with local organizations by joining a nonprofit, connecting with your coworkers, or getting involved with clubs and activities on campus. When you set a goal for yourself, I think that you'll find it is easier to make human connection a more regular part of your life, even if it's something that makes you nervous right now, because it will become more routine. And when it does, you'll start to see the value that I've gained in my 4,200 meetings. You'll understand why each and every one of those was incredibly impactful to my life. Because an increased sense of belonging, that can change your life in the same way that a date can. Having an appreciation for your family before they're gone, that'll change your life in the same way that that new business deal will. So as you pass people on campus, on your commutes, in your life, just remember, every single human interaction holds the potential to change your life. So don't pass it up. Thank you.